You're a music producer with sound design, digging into all those synths and samplers, all those parameters. You'd rather be making music instead of just, mousing around. Yeah, well, me too. So let's take a few minutes and make a very usable pad sound together in Ableton's Wavetable synth. No deep dives here, just the beginner basics. Stay with me. Welcome back to the 5 Loft, where the process is the story. I'm Al Clark. I've been scanning presets for decades, literally. You know the drill. It sounds like this. For me, this is a surefire way to stop the creative flow, to actually stop the process. For me, it's approaching it from the negative. It's not this sound. It's not that sound. And of course, I'm watching all these videos of producers who are very quickly and easily making sound design a part of their creative process. So I looked it up. What's the best synth in Ableton to start making your own sounds? And a bunch of folks said Wavetable. Even the Ableton manual says it's simple enough to yield great results with a minimum of effort and offers nearly limitless range of possibilities as you go deeper. And you know what? Now I understand why. So let's take a look. So the first thing, and probably the best thing about the Wavetable, besides its sounds, is the fact that you can blow this thing up really big. So watch this. What I'll do here is I'm going to take a wavetable, not any of these parameters here, not any of these presets, but you could just take the wavetable itself, synth itself, and just drag that over to the pad, right? And now you can come down to this little triangle and watch this, bam. You get a full synth, like a full view with the synth. Like literally every parameter is right there. There's like no hidden menus or anything like that. It's all right there. And once you understand a few concepts, it's really not that bad. At least for me, it wasn't. Let's get visually oriented. This top area here, okay, that's your sound source. That's the oscillators. And so this is a wavetable synth. So this is where the sound comes from. Check it out. You've got all these categories, right? And like if you click into distortion, and then within that you have all of these different waves. We're going to stay really simple with these basic shapes. This part in and of itself can be a little bit overwhelming, but we're going to, like I said, keep it really simple. The next section is your modulation section. Modulation is just changing a particular parameter or part of the synth over time. That's it. So the first one here is your amp envelope, and that's always just changing the volume of the sound over time. You get 2 additional envelopes to shape the sound, to shape the other parameters, really almost any parameter that you want. And in this first patch, we're not even going to use the other 2 envelopes. Next, there are the 2 LFOs in this section down here, the low frequency oscillators. And again, these are just changing a parameter over time. But for LFOs, it's changing a parameter over time in the shape of a wave. And we'll hear what that sounds like in a few minutes. Next is the filter section. This is a powerful part of any synth and has a huge effect on the overall sound. When they talk about subtractive synthesis, the filter is really what they're talking about, because it's literally taking away or filtering out certain frequencies of the sound. And of course, you can change or modulate this filter over time by choosing an envelope or an LFO and applying it to the filter. The choosing happens here in the matrix section. This looks really complicated, but it's actually, seriously, very simple. And later on, if you're comfortable, you can make that as complicated as you want. I have not. And finally, you have the global area, where you can set the overall volume, the amount of voices, add unison, but whatever. We'll talk about that in a minute. The powerful thing here, again, is that it's all right in front of you. So once you understand what you're looking at, in a few sessions, it starts to look simpler and simpler. So let's make an easy pad sound that can form the music bed of, like, for me these days, an atmospheric drum and bass track, like an intelligent, what they call intelligent drum and bass. I've been really digging the that 90s, like LTJ Bookham vibe, and I'm loving it. So let's take a look. All right, so the first thing I do, once I got this loaded up in here, is I go down to the matrix, and you see all these numbers down there. It's like very confusing. So what I do is if you double click anywhere where there's a number in the matrix, it automatically takes the thing down to 0. So we're starting with a blank slate here. We're making a pad sound. So for me, pad sounds, for the most part, imply chords. So I'm in, I've got my push 3 over here. So we're in like C Dorian. Oop, I've got the reverb on. I'm gonna turn that off for now. C Dorian, so I'm gonna go like a C minor 7th up to like some sort of F major thing. So C minor 7th to F major. And that's what I'm going to be using to make this pad sound. For me, I like to know where I'm going, because I think what chord you're playing, especially the voicing of it, in terms of where the notes are placed, I think that has a big impact on your sound design. So you want to know like where you're coming from here. So I'm just going to hang here on C minor 7th to start to make this sound. All right, so where are we going first? Let's take a look at these oscillators. I have oscillator 1 on, oscillator 2 is off. This is a wavetable synth. So the power of the wavetable synth is your ability within one oscillator to change dynamically the shape of the wave. So when you have the basic shapes here selected, what you end up getting is the 4 sort of classic analog wave shapes: sine wave, triangle, sawtooth, and square. Notice that as I go from sine to square, it gets like buzzier or brighter. It's actually adding harmonics. It's making the sound in some ways richer. And so I'm going to start with a sine wave because it's the easiest for me. And so we're just going to leave that at the default. My second oscillator, boom, over here, also set to a sine wave here. And as I go through, right, I can change it. It got a little louder because I'm adding the second oscillator. But what we're going to do is we're going to change from basic to collections, and we're going to use this thing called amber. Who knows what that is? Not sure. But listen to this. Kind of like gives it that like sweepy, swirly movement. Okay, perfect for a pad. I'm going to drop this volume of the second oscillator down to, I think I had it at like 6.3-ish, somewhere in there. Right in there. And I'm going to set this to like the middle, 55. Now, what I want to have happen, what would be cool, is if on that second oscillator, this thing just was sweeping up and down all the time. Well, sweeping up and down all the time suggests modulation, change, right? But at a regular interval, that's what the LFO is. Changing a parameter over time in the shape of a wave, LFO. So, watch the way this works. Whatever parameter I click on is going to show up in the matrix. So for example, if I click on the gain of oscillator 2, notice it shows up down here as oscillator 2 gain in the matrix. If I click on oscillator 2 position, notice it shows up down here. Well, I take oscillator 2 position and I want to apply the LFO1 to it. Well, I just come down here, and as I start to increase that, look at that, it starts to change it. And the more I increase the LFO, the wider it goes. So I'm going to drop this down to, I think it was like 42-ish that we were doing. All right, so that's like, well, that is way too spinny for me. So I'm going to take the rate and I'm going to drop that down and make that slower. So now what you get is this sort of slow, swirly thing happening. Now, another quick tip here, notice that it always starts in the same position. That's determined by this little tiny little R here. That's called retrigger. So if I turn retrigger off, the LFO just keeps cycling no matter whether I'm hitting the keys or not. For me, in this case, I want to keep it on retrigger just to make the sound, but eventually we're going to turn that off. Okay, now, the next thing we can do is we can take a look at this amp envelope. The amp envelope determines how loud and how soft and how the sound comes in over time. So, listen, as I hit the keys, it's coming in instantaneously. I've got 4 parameters in the amp envelope: ADSR, attack, decay, sustain, and release. The attack is how it comes in, instantaneous. We want to increase the attack so it starts to, in a sense, fade in over time. Right? That's like the pad sound. It just smoothly comes in. Now, as I hold down the keys, that overall volume, that's determined by sustain. Attack, sustain 0. Attack, sustain full. That's the volume as you hold down the keys. So I'm going to leave that at the default, double click for default. Okay, DD, double click for default. Now, attack, how much time it takes to get down to that sustain level, that's your decay. I'm going to set that at about sort of twice what the attack is. Attack, and then slowly down to where it's sustaining. Now watch, I'll release my hands and notice that the sound disappears right away. That's the release. Release your hands, release the sound. Comes in, I release my hands, it goes away right away. So I'll increase the release time to, like, I don't know, 3 seconds or so. Attack, decay, sustain, now release, and it sort of slowly fades out. Now, I'm going to set all these to their defaults. And I'm going to come up here to my track. I've got, like, this is my C minor 7th to F major. Okay, sounding pretty rough, right? How do I get back here? All right, so as my chords are playing, I'll bring this guy back up again. As my chords are playing, let's start to play with this attack first. I'll increase the attack up to about a second. Hear how the sound is starting to fade in, right? Smooth, right? We'll increase our decay to around 2 seconds. And it fades down to the sustain, which we're going to keep it at default. Now listen as I increase the release time. chords sort of just morph into one another. That release time is really dependent on like your track, on the chords, the timing, and now you've got this kind of like flowing sound here. Listen to this. Let's add a little bit of that reverb. Nice. Now we're like in a space. We'll do one last thing here. We'll come over to the overall volume. I'm just going to bring down the volume just a little bit, and we'll add unison. I'll turn off the re-trigger. So now every time the chord hits, it's in a different position. I'll bring down the amount of the unison a little bit. It's a little bit too detuned for me. Oh yeah. Let's add a little bit of that bass. Boom, boom. Drums. Nice. Very easy. It's not bad, right? It's really not that bad. You're just sort of, once you understand the concept, especially that amp envelope, once you understand that and the matrix, look, it's what I have here is really not that simple. It's not that all that complicated, and you can get sort of a really cool sound with it. I hope that's what you took away here, is that it's really not that bad, and that sound design can become a part of your creative process in a really easy way. Take it simple at first. Listen, I was always scared of synthesizers. Honestly, going back in the day, I think my friend had like a Roland Juno 6. I never understood it. I was a guitar player. You know, just give me a bunch of pedals and I'll play with that. I was never into this. This was too much math for me, right? But it's really not that bad. So that's it for the 5.Loft for this week. If you like this content, this kind of content, maybe you like, maybe you subscribe. Please leave a comment. Until next week, I'm Al Clark. See you then.